For more into the controversy and U.S. higher education, Douglas Sloan, principal at the National Capital Strategy Consulting Group, also a VP of the DC National Association for Advancement of Colored People. Good to see you. Welcome back to the show. Help our audience, which is an international audience, they may not be fully familiar with how affirmative action, and we mentioned a little bit about the history. Where does affirmative action stand right now in 2022?
Well, I believe one of the last times the courts revisited affirmative action in terms of universities was 2003 with Sandra Day O'Connor ruling that perhaps 25 years down the line we will be in a much better place to perhaps end affirmative action policies. Affirmative action policies are in place because of the history of racism, specifically institutionalized racism within the United States. So we have found it important that we enact policies that will specifically prohibit racism and the practice of racism in our institutions to ensure that we have an equal and that we have equitable, rather policies pushing for
right. Okay.
Equitable, equal people in the world.
Fair enough. I think we can all agree on equal and equitable. Asian Americans,
right,
following this Harvard issue, now at the Supreme Court, are saying that they are being discriminated against because they are Asian. Is that true or false?
I struggle to understand the argument there when they're saying they're being discriminated against because they're Asian. These policies were originally put in place specifically for African Americans and later for Latino people to stop the systemic racism that we have in these institutions. They were put in place to ensure that we have diversity in these institutions and that the institutions will reflect the face of America. So we have a very high number of Asian people at these institutions of higher learning. I don't want to put words,
Douglas, I don't want to put words.
That it reflects the face of America at this point.
Douglas, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but some people would say that they're insinuating that there are too many Asians in universities, so there should be less of them. And I'm not saying it, other experts are saying it, and I don't know how I should respond, let alone, so that's why I'm asking you, well, how should somebody respond when someone says that? Because I don't think they're necessarily wrong. Of course, nobody wants to be discriminated against. I mean, nobody.
Right, absolutely not. I just think it's important that, given that when you find these incidents of racism in these higher institutions, it is often, not always, often directed towards Blacks and Latinos. And in essence, that's why these affirmative action policies were put into place, to prevent racism, discrimination against Blacks and Latinos. Now, what they're talking about now is different. I don't know if you can say it's discrimination per se, but I mean, obviously there is an issue there that we need to examine because they're saying that, well, because there are so many of us that now, even if we're qualified, we can't get in.
I'm just saying, if somebody told me this, if you reversed the argument, and let's just say they were African Americans, and there were so many African Americans, yet there were no Asians or not enough Asians at the university, and we decided to take away seats in the classroom for one race for another, I could almost bet my entire net worth, which isn't very much, that a lot of people would claim that that is racism, would they not?
I don't like to deal in hypotheticals. I will say, again, I will reiterate that these policies were put in place to prevent discrimination and racism, specifically towards African Americans and Latinos, and that, of course, Asians should be included in that as well. But I think more importantly, and what should be at the forefront of this is trying to ensure that these institutions of higher learning and in our boardrooms and in our workplaces reflect the overall face of America. And I think that's what we're going for. And to take it a bit further, originally when these policies were put in back in the 60s, they were implemented to right the wrongs of discrimination against Black people in this country over the past
very fair.
years.
I just want to put context in here that, this comes from somebody who's given a lot to underrepresented groups or groups that need financial assistance, right? Just the last question is, would one way to solve this problem that, I think that everyone can get on board is perhaps offer more scholarships or monetary scholarships to those groups that, as you say, are underrepresented? Would that help, I guess, deflate or disengage this discussion a little bit better?
Well, one would hope, but you always have people that say, the Blacks or Latinos are only here because of the affirmative action policies, or Blacks or Latinos are only there because of the specialized treatment. There are always going to be different problems and different arguments and different issues that arise, but I think we have to keep our eye on the ball, that we need to ensure that these institutions reflect the face of America, that they are diverse, and that we continue to strive to prevent racism and discrimination against any ethnic group.
I think that's a great way to end it, Douglas. Really appreciate your thoughts on this and appreciate you helping us understand the historical nature of this important topic. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.